Sitting across from my brother-in-law at the crowded dining table, I watched a smug grin spread across his face while the rest of my family suddenly looked down at their plates. The ice water from the pier was still dripping from my jacket when I pulled out my phone to clear a couple of routine vendor invoices. Instead of my actual balance, the screen blinked once before displaying a flat 0, showing that 5 years of sleepless nights had vanished into thin air. He raised his wine glass in a silent toast, his mocking laughter filling the quiet room because he genuinely believed he had broken me right then and there. My name is Valerie, and until that exact moment, I used to think that family was an unbreakable bond that would always hold you up when things got rough. Growing up in a quiet neighborhood just outside Seattle, my childhood was defined by the scent of fresh pine and the comforting hum of my parents' small antique restoration shop. They raised me to appreciate the value of an honest day of work, to always honor my commitments, and to never expect a single handout. My younger sister Melanie was the complete opposite, moving through life with a reckless sense of entitlement while expecting everyone else to clean up her constant messes. When our parents were suddenly taken from us by a reckless driver on a rainy evening, our fragile world completely shattered into a million pieces. The local attorney divided their modest estate evenly, giving me enough capital to finally launch the specialized clothing boutique I had spent my entire youth planning. Melanie met a fast-talking real estate speculator named Garrett, a slick operator who wore expensive suits he had not earned and spoke with a terrifyingly smooth confidence. They married within a few short months, and I watched my vibrant sister gradually shrink into a quiet shadow, constantly looking at Garrett for permission before she even dared to speak. This brings us to the annual summer gathering at our late grandparents' lakeside property. A trip that was supposed to help us heal our growing estrangement. I arrived with a trunk full of groceries and a genuine hope that we could finally find some common ground after so many months of tense silence. The trouble started small on the very first afternoon when I walked up to the guest room to grab a sweater and noticed my laptop was sitting at a completely different angle. The power cord was plugged into the opposite side, and the browsing history had been completely wiped clean, sending a cold shiver straight down my spine. By the next morning, the hidden trap finally snapped shut when my store manager called me in a complete panic to report that our primary fabric shipment had bounced. Opening my financial application confirmed my worst nightmare because my entire corporate reserve had been completely drained through a series of midnight wire transfers. When I walked into the sunny kitchen and announced that my livelihood was gone, the room fell dead silent while Uncle Julian stood up in total shock. Garrett simply leaned back in his chair with his arms crossed, completely unbothered by the chaos unfolding around him. The banking representative confirmed that the perpetrator had used my exact security credentials from a recognized device within the house, causing me to look directly at Garrett. When I asked him why he was near my computer the previous evening, Melanie immediately jumped to his defense while Garrett let out a cruel, dismissive laugh. He told me that perhaps my little business venture was just poorly managed, or that I simply lacked basic financial literacy. When I demanded to see his personal transaction history to clear his name, his arrogant smile twitched as he claimed he owed absolutely no one any explanations. The tension in the room finally snapped when Garrett leaned across the table and quietly stated that they simply needed the capital much more than I did. The entire kitchen erupted into angry shouting, but a strange, icy calm washed over me as the betrayal settled deep into my bones. I realized this was not a terrible misunderstanding, but a calculated strike designed to ruin me while he safely hid behind my sister's silence. My legs shook as I reached into my leather handbag, but my mind was sharper than it had been in years because I suddenly remembered a critical detail. Garrett stood up so violently that his heavy wooden chair scraped loudly against the floor, stepping toward me with a dark, threatening look in his eyes. Uncle Julian immediately stepped into his path, ordering him to back off in a powerful voice that usually settled our fiercest family debates. Garrett scoffed in his face, claiming that the funds were completely gone and buried where no investigator would ever find them. He grabbed Melanie's wrist with a tight, practiced grip and ordered her to gather their bags because they were leaving the property immediately. I stood my ground and told them that nobody was stepping outside this house until the authorities arrived to document the entire theft. Garrett laughed loudly, asking me what a few local officers could possibly do about a digital transaction that carried no physical evidence. He had absolutely no idea that after a minor security scare at my shop 6 months ago, I had installed a background tracking application on my laptop. The software was specifically designed to capture high-resolution photographs of unauthorized users, log every single keystroke, and timestamp the precise device locations. I placed the call to the emergency dispatchers, giving them our exact location and reporting a major corporate embezzlement scheme with total confidence. Garrett kept pacing around the room, mocking my actions while trying to convince Melanie to follow him out to their vehicle. I looked directly at my sister and begged her to finally tell the truth about what they had done to my life. Melanie looked at his furious face, tore her arm away from his tight grip, and screamed that she was completely exhausted from carrying his endless lies. A massive, thundering crash suddenly echoed through the front hallway as the heavy main door was forced open, rattling the windows and dropping old pictures from the walls. 3 state troopers stepped into the living room with their hands on their gear, followed closely by an investigator named Specialist Vance. She looked at me, stating that my financial institution's fraud department had already flagged the massive midnight transfers and traced them directly to this rural coordinate. Garrett began to stutter, frantically explaining that some anonymous offshore hacker must have intercepted our shared network connection. I handed my phone directly to Specialist Vance, showing her the administrative portal of my security software, which contained a flawless sequence of night vision photographs. The screen displayed clear images of Garrett sitting in my dark guest room, his face illuminated by the bright blue light of my monitor as he entered the stolen passwords. The investigator instructed the nearest officer to secure the suspect, causing Garrett to struggle wildly while screaming for Melanie to defend him. My sister stood perfectly still beside me, telling him with absolute certainty that he was finally reaping exactly what he had sown. As they marched him down the gravel driveway in restraints, the heavy silence that settled over the lake house felt incredibly light and peaceful for the first time. Melanie collapsed against my shoulder, sobbing tears of pure relief as she apologized for the months of terror she had endured under his control. The investigator assured me that with such definitive digital evidence, the state would freeze his accounts and recover the vast majority of my stolen capital. We spent the remainder of the week opening the dark curtains, repairing the broken door, and slowly reclaiming our family sanctuary. By the following month, I was standing inside my brand new secondary boutique location, watching the afternoon sun illuminate the beautiful clothing displays. The funds had been fully restored, my business was thriving, and Melanie had successfully filed for legal separation while adjusting to her new independent life. Looking back at the nightmare at the lake house, I finally understood that shared DNA does not automatically grant people permission to destroy your world. True safety is built through fierce boundaries, and sometimes you have to let the structure burn to discover who truly stands by your side.